Alright, hello everyone, welcome back to the F equals MA Club online lecture for day 9. This is going to be, as I said, the online lecture for our 9th week for the F equals MA Club. Today we talked about static mechanics, and let's just get straight into it. So just a little bit of review. Last time we talked about oscillations and waves. This is a very rarely tested element, especially waves, which I double checked. There's actually only 2 problems. The third problem that I saw was a centripetal force problem that wasn't even too much of a wave problem. But basically, we just talked about simple harmonic motion. We talked about periodic motion. We talked about the mechanical energy equation, where we had everything equal to 1 over 2 Ka squared. And if you want to know more about that, you can check the original video or just Google everything. We talked a little bit about spring constants for multiple springs. We also talked about the speed of a transverse wave, but that's pretty much it. Today we're going to be talking about static mechanics, right? And so static mechanics, it's not really too big or like too different of a topic. It's just something that's nice to know. And there's not too many problems that have their direct focus on this portion in the test, but it's just something that's nice to remember and have in your mind. And so static equilibrium, that's when our force is equal to 0, or our net force is equal to 0, and our net torque is equal to 0, and our external forces are also 0. And so that means that so the interesting thing about static equilibrium is that the components of the system are at rest. For something like dynamic equilibrium, on the other hand, that is when components are subject to some sort of constant velocity. So it may have zero torque, zero force, but it will still have a velocity. And so for static equilibrium, that is not true. Remember that our net external forces are also going to be equal to 0, and our internal forces can actually be cancelled out based on Newton's third law, which is basically action and reaction. So for planar situations, this isn't actually tested too much. I don't think it's ever been tested on a recent test for the F equals MA test, but it's just nice to know. Just remember that means that the force and the acting arm are on the plane of the page. And here, if you can see what I'm doing, the force and the acting arm are going to be on the page. So we're assuming that this is the page, and our torque is going to be pointing towards or away from you. And so this is kind of based on the 3-dimensional right-hand rule stuff. If you want to know more, again, just double check on Google or some other source. For planar situations, basically, the torque will only have a z component, so we have these 3 equations that need to be satisfied. Anyways, let's move on. So for subsystems, so basically systems within a system, remember to deal with isolated objects or subsystems first. Try and see if you can treat all subsystems as one by considering the center of mass of the system. Center of mass is acceleration, velocity, all that stuff. Remember to check if there are different components that you need to address, and there's a big thing about external forces. And this will pop up a little bit more once we get into our worksheet. Next, we have the origin of our torques. So you can choose any place on an object or some kind of free body diagram as an origin for calculating torques. So what's recommended is to choose an origin that makes the most unknown forces have 0 torques. So for this kind of ladder problem kind of thing, we're going to try and choose this as our origin here, since there's going to be the most unknown forces that we can just reduce to 0. Because at the point of the origin, our torque is going to be 0. And so finally, we have center of mass stuff. So remember that in a torque equation, the force of gravity is going to be located at the center of mass. And so try and set the center of gravity to be 0 by balancing objects together for something like this. And remember that the center of mass should be on the edge. Alright, so let's get straight into our worksheet. So, first problem. A simplified model of the foot is shown. When a student of mass 60 kilograms stands on a single toe, the tension T on the Achilles tendon is closest to one of these values. So, let's get straight into it. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, I remember. Just give me a moment. I forgot that display captures were slightly altered. Is this correct? Yeah, it is. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of fidonkeling. Yeah, okay, so let's go straight here, right? So we have a foot, right? A very concerning looking foot. So we have this Achilles tendon here. We have this is the ankle. We have this is the Achilles tendon. This is the toe, right? And if we look at the measurements, I'm not gonna write them too clearly, but we have here that is going to be around I would say 7, right? 7 centimeters. Here would be around 12 centimeters. And this is around 32 centimeters, right? All right, so this is going to be a torque problem, right? We have some force of gravity pushing down here, right? We have the force of gravity pulling that down. Let's actually draw this a little bit better. We have some, let's actually use colors for once. We have some force of gravity in this direction, right? And we have some tension force, right? Coming from this Achilles tendon, and that's kind of what it's asking here, right? Oh, I need to reset colors actually. So, our big thing is our force of gravity, or our torque, right? So our torque is going to be equal to the tension force, and we can set this as our axis of rotation, right? It's our tension force plus this times this distance. We're gonna call this x1 minus let's say that this distance is going to be x2 minus, so this would be the force of gravity times x sub 2, right? Not x sub 2, x sub 2. And so since our net torque is going to be equal to 0, that means that our tension is going to have to equal to our gravitational force, right? So that means that our tension times, what is this, 5, right? Tension times 5 is going to be equal to our force of gravity. The student is 60 kilograms, so this is going to be 600 newtons, right? 60 times 10 times, what is that, 20, right? All right, so that means that our tension is going to be 600 times 20 divided by 5. And that's going to give us 60 times 4, which is equal to 2,400 newtons. And if we check back on our worksheet, that's going to give us answer choice D, which is 2,400 newtons. All right, next, a right triangular wooden block of mass M is at rest on a table, as shown in the figure. Two smaller wooden cubes, both with mass M, initially rest with two sides of the larger block. As all contact surfaces are frictionless, the smaller cubes start sliding down the larger block while the block remains at rest. What is the normal force from the system to the table? All right, so let's go straight back. All right, so we have, let's do this tool. This is a very nice, no. This is, of course, this is not to scale, but I'm trying my best, and let's see if I succeed. Close enough. So we have a right angle here. We have, what is this? We have alpha here, and we have beta here, right? We have this set as mass M, and we have two blocks, both with mass little m, and we're trying to find the normal force on the table, right? So let's first set the external forces to 0, right? Let's set the external forces equal to 0. So what are the external forces? Well, our external forces are going to be gravity, right? We should use those colors again. We have the force of gravity, right? And we have, I'm going to adjust this a little bit, and we have here the normal force, right? And so that means that our total force, basically our system, our mass of our system times our acceleration of our center of mass is going to be equal to our gravitational force minus our normal force, right? that's going to be the equation that we're going to be going by. And since we're going to be writing a lot for this problem, I'm going to move this to the side and shrink this a little bit. Alright, so let's keep on going. So let's find the accelerations of each of these components, right? Let's just say this is A1 and this is A2. So let's move this to the side. Let's just calculate A1 for now, right? So let's think about how this works, right? This is an inclined plane if we draw it like this. And so that means that our force here is going to be g sine of theta, right? Not our force, our acceleration, right? And that's basically a common fact because we know that the force here is mg sine theta and that equals ma, and we can just cross those out to get a equals g sine of theta, right? All right, now our acceleration of our center of mass, we're going to need to find this vertical component, right? There's two components of this acceleration, and we're going to need to find the vertical component of this acceleration. So let's just set this as a alpha, right? So that means that this this component, let's just call this a1. A1 is going to be equal to a alpha sine of theta, right? And we can just, if you want to determine how, this is just some trig. And so we can just say that a1 is equal to g sine of theta times the sine of theta, which means that a1 is equal to g sine of, oh, sorry, not theta. Well, yeah, we can set it as theta for now. Theta, sine squared of theta. And so that theta isn't a theta. If we look back, this is actually an alpha. So that means that our a1, this is alpha, is equal to g sine squared of alpha. And we can do essentially the exact same for the other block, right? This is beta. And if we set that value to a2, that means that a2 is equal to g sine squared of beta, right? And we can use the same process. This is g sine beta, and then we know we need that vertical component, so it's just g sine squared beta, right? All right, so let's actually select this. This is our second part, right? Let's just move that, drag this here, shrink it a little bit, right? Let's move this to here, and we can continue, right? All right, so hopefully you could see all that. I forgot if I reset my Krita stuff, so hopefully you were able to read all that. But now we have these two, right? And so our acceleration of center of mass is going to be following basically the equation that we use for every single center of mass thing, right? So that's going to be our mass, I, times our acceleration over the sum of all our masses, right? And so this is going to be equal to our mass times a1 plus our mass of a2, right? Divided by our total mass, our mass of our system, right? Our mass of our system is actually going to be m plus 2m, right? If we think about this properly. So that means that we have m plus 2m on the bottom here, right? All right, so the next part, this is going to be a little bit of trig. This is some actually interesting trig. So remember that alpha and beta are going to be complementary, right? Because we know that the sum of all angles on the triangle is going to be equal to 180, right? And we already know that this angle is 90 degrees. So we know that alpha plus beta is also going to give us 90 degrees, right? 90 degrees plus 90 degrees equals 180. So that means that we can say that that beta is equal to 90 degrees minus our alpha, right? And so that means that we can say that we know the proof that sine 90 minus some angle is going to give us a cosine of that angle, right? And so that means that if we go here, that means that this equals our mass times g sine squared alpha, I know how to write, plus not g. Oh yeah, yes, g, plus m g cosine squared of alpha, right? Because our beta is just equal to 90 minus a alpha, and we already proved that that equals cosine, right? So we can divide all this by m plus 2m. All right, more zooming, more shrinking. This is fun. But anyways, this means that we have another little trig thing. So we know that sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1, not plus, equal to 1. So we can actually set this. We can say that this equals mg times, what is this, sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha, right? We can factor this out, which means that this is just equal to 1. This is just 1, so we can just say that this is mg over m plus 2m, right? And so we can go back here to this equation. So that means that our m system, so our m plus 2m, times our acceleration, which is mg over m plus 2m, is equal to the gravitational force, which is just which is equal to mg, right? M plus 2m g minus n. So what we can do here is we can just let me see if I'm actually doing this right. So we can cross this out. So mg equals oh, sorry. This is not that. This is just big mg minus n, right? So this means that this is we can say that our these two cancel out, so our n can just equal to mg plus little mg, right? Right. And the thing is, we can set this to negative and make this positive, right? I think that's where I went wrong here. And so that gives us this, and if we look back at our worksheet, that's just gonna give us c, which is little mg plus big mg, right? All right, sorry about that. That was very long, but that's the nature of some of these problems. So let's just move on to the next problem, right? So a sign below consists of two uniform legs attached by a frictionless hinge. Coefficient of friction between the ground and the legs is mu. Which of the following gives the maximum value of theta such that the sign will not collapse? All right, so this is going to be a torque problem. One of my favorites. I'm lying, it's not my favorite. So we have a sign, right, composed of two hinges. So basically a triangle looking thing, right? And I'll just draw that in. So we have some theta here. And we have this as length L, right? This is length L. And so what we can do first is we can just kind of split this in half, make this into theta over 2, right? Theta over 2. So we can work from here, right? Let's just first move this over and kind of shrink it down a bit, since we're going to be working a little bit more again. So let's draw out basically this new free body. So we have some line that divides this, right? It's this part, we have the ground, right? And we have this hinge, right? We have this hinge. This hinge is length L. It has some kind of frictional force here, right? Frictional force. It has some gravitational force, right? Some normal force that counteracts the gravitational force. And we have another normal force against the wall. So we can just call this normal force wall, right? And so we know that Fn here is going to be equal to our gravitational force, right? So that means that our frictional force is going to be equal to mu mg, right? That's our gravitational force that means that our normal force, which is the only kind of force that's counteracting this frictional force, that means that our frictional force equals our normal force on the wall, which means that our normal force on the wall is equal to mu mg, right? Okay, that's basically the preliminary setup that we need. I'm gonna move this a little bit again. So let's just put this here and zoom it down a bit. So that's basically our second step, right? Next, we can now make this into a torque problem, right? So our torque is going to be equal to our mg, right? L over 2, because remember that our force kind of the mass of this ladder is going to act. So this gravitational force shouldn't be here. The gravitational force should be here, right? Sorry about that. But normal force is still going to be equal to the gravitational force, but the gravitational force is going to come from the center of mass, right? Sorry about that mishap, but that means that we can make this our moment arm, right? We can make that our moment arm. That way we can eliminate both of these forces. Let's remove some of these scribbles. So, just a little bit of erasing because I don't want to cause too much confusion. But so we can make basically this point our moment arm, right? Our origin. We can make that our gravitational force. So that means that the distance between this is L over 2, and we can put a sign. And remember, this is theta over 2 because our full theta is that. So our theta here is going to be theta over 2, right? So this is going to be that, right? And that's technically pulling clockwise. So we can set this to be negative plus our normal force from the wall, right? Oh, wait, no. We can just make this minus our normal force from the wall, right? Times L cosine of theta over 2, right? All right, so we can just work from here, right? So that means that we can set mg L over 2 sine theta over 2 equal to the normal force, normal force from the wall, L cosine of theta over 2 as well. So we're trying to find that frictional constant, right? So this normal, remember that our normal force on the wall is going to be equal to mu mg. So that means, let's just remove that. So that means this is mu mg L cosine theta over 2, right? All right, so we can eliminate a few things. We can first eliminate these, right? So that means that this is 1 over 2 sine of theta over 2. It's going to be equal to mu cosine of theta times cosine theta over 2, right? So we're trying to find the frictional coefficient, right? In regards to something that's probably related to tangent, probably not sine. So we can say that we can just divide by cosine theta over 2 on both sides, right? We divide both sides by cosine theta over 2, and that gives us that mu is equal to 1 over 2 tangent, remember, this is sine over cosine, tangent theta over 2. Now, if we look back on our answer choices, right, that is the wrong thing to select. If we look back on our answer choices, we're going to see that none of them have 1 over 2 tangent theta. But we do have a 2 on this side, right? And so that's going to give us E, actually. So we can just multiply by 2 on both sides of our equation and get 2 mu equals tangent theta over 2. So that's going to give us answer choice E. All right, next, as shown below, Lily is using the rope. Why is her name Lily? Lily is using the rope through a fixed pulley to move a box with constant speed, v. The kinetic friction coefficient between the box and the ground is mu is less than 1. Assume that the fixed pulley is massless. I'm pretty sure. So assume the pulley is massless and there's no friction between the rope and the fixed pulley. While the box is moving, which of the following statements is correct? So the basis of this is that as this, we're just going to say that as a tension force is being applied, right? As a force is being applied on this side, that directly translates here. Let's just say this is f of t. And we have our box here, right? This is the general basis of this. So this is just gonna transfer the force basically completely efficiently. And so what we can say is that we can look at this and we know that this is technically not doing anything. So we can say that our net force is still going to be equal to 0. And so that means that it's going to be equal to our force of gravity. It's actually going to be our force of tension, a sine of theta, right? It's going to be the vertical component of this tension plus our normal force minus our force of gravity is going to be equal to 0. So that means that our tension force, sine of theta, plus our normal force is going to be equal to our gravitational force, right? So that means that our normal force is going to be decreasing, right? Because as we keep on pulling, this force is going to get higher, right? Become higher, and so this gravitational force is going to stay constant. So that means that our normal force is going to decrease. And so if we look back on our answer key, not our answer key, our worksheet, we're going to see we're going to start eliminating our stuff. So first, magnitude of the force on the rope is constant. That is not true. Second, magnitude of friction between the ground and the box is decreasing. That might be true because our frictional force is going to be our frictional coefficient times our normal force, right? And so if our normal force is decreasing, that means our frictional force is also decreasing. Third, magnitude of normal force is increasing. That is not true. We just determined it was decreasing. Fourth and fifth, we know that pressure is going to be our force divided by our area. And since our force is decreasing, that means that our pressure is also going to be decreasing, right? And so that only leaves us B, which is that the magnitude of the friction between the ground and the box is going to be decreasing. All right, on to the final problem. In the mobile below, or I don't know how you, if you pronounce it differently, I don't care. TNT. Anyways, in the mobile below, the 2 cross beams and the 7 supporting springs are all massless. The hanging objects are mass 1 equals 400 grams, mass 2 equals 200 grams, and mass 4 equals 500 grams. What is the value of M3 for the system to be in static equilibrium? Okay, finally, it actually addresses that. So, what do we have here? We have a string on top, right? We have we have some sort of cable here, right? We have one more string going down. We have one string going down here. Nope. We have one string going down here. We have one string going down here. And then one more string going down. Nope. Here. Nope. Sorry. No. A string. One more going down here. And we have another cable here. And we have 2 more strings going down here, one here, and one here, right? So pretend everything's okay. We have a mass 1 here. We have a mass 3 here. We have a mass 4 here. And we have a mass 2 here. So let's look at these distances now. This is going to be 0.5 meters. This is going to be 0.2 and 0.2 meters. This is going to be 0.1 meters and 0.1 meters. And this total is going to be 0.4 meters, right? All right, so starting from here, we can count these ropes as just internal forces, right? So like the fact that they're connected isn't going to affect much. The big thing is that we're going to be having a torque problem, right? These are going to cause this to pull down, and these are going to cause this to pull down as well, right? And so we can set these 2 torques equal to these 2 torques. And so that means we can just measure these distances and measure the masses on this. And this is one of the first things that you learn if you're looking through an AP textbook about torques and equilibriums. And so that's that our basically that the force times our distance force distance, and force distance, right? And we need to set all of those to 0. So first, force of this, it's going to be m1g times 0.4 meters plus m3 times g times 0.2 meters. Remember, we're just adding these two up, is going to be equal to our mass 4 g times 0.4 meters, right? Plus mass 2g times 0.5 meters. And I ran out of space, but we can cross out all g's here. I'm actually going to slightly move this over a bit and shrink it again. All right, and so starting from here, now we have now we can start plugging in some values. So we have 400 times 0.4 plus m3 times 0.2 is going to be equal to mass 4 is 500, right? 500 times 0.4 plus mass 2 is 200 times 0.5, right? So we can start plugging in some values. So 160 plus 0.2 m3 is equal to, please tell me I'm doing this right, 200 plus 100, right? So that's 300. Did I do this right? I feel like I did this right. So that's 0.2. That means that we can say that this is 300 minus 160. 0.2 m3 is going to be equal to 140, since this is 300 minus 160. And that means that if we just multiply by 5 on both sides, our mass 3 is going to be equal to 700 grams. And if we go back to our handy dandy little worksheet, we'll see that that gives us E, which is going to be 700 grams. All right, and that wraps it up for today. Today wasn't really a lesson that I enjoyed too much, but next time is going to be a lot more interesting. It's going to be fluid mechanics, and I would recommend everyone stick around for next week, since that's actually going to be a pretty interesting one. And remember, this year, the test is going to be, the FMA test is going to be on February 9th. So just a few weeks from now. And I would like to wish everyone good luck. And remember that registration deadline is going to be on the 23rd of January this year. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and have a good day. And I'll see you next week.